This video got 2 influencers banned from Japan because essentially this stunt was supposed to generate attention online. But after 2 Americans entered the enclosure of a famous baby monkey in Japan, they ended up getting the attention from the police instead. So here you have 2 American influencers traveling all the way to Japan and entering the enclosure of one of the internet's most beloved animals, Punch the monkey.
Everybody loves Punch the monkey, and maybe a little bit too much. 2 Americans were arrested after trying to break into his enclosure at the Ichikawa Zoo in Japan. Police detained Reed Janai Dason and Neil Jabari Duan, both in their 20s. They say one man jumped the fence while the other filmed. Video shows a person in a blue suit with a stuffed emoji head climbing into and around the enclosure. That emoji used to promote meme coin cryptocurrencies. The macaques reportedly were terrified, having gone long on Dogecoin back in 2021. The intruder also was seen with a stuffed toy. The 2 curious Georges were arrested and charged with obstructing zoo operations.
Honestly, I would just love to see one headline about influencers visiting another country that doesn't involve someone getting arrested, detained, deported, or becoming the reasons local officials have to rewrite policy and locals hating them. Also, I just hate the term influencers, even though that's what all the headlines say. I much prefer creators, because who are these people influencing? But regardless, I just want like a headline. Obviously, it's not going to generate as many clicks, but I want a simple headline of something like American influencer visits Japan, enjoys the culture, takes some pictures, enjoys the food, and returns home without a single incident. Is that too much to ask for? But no. Instead, we get this. So according to Japanese authorities, you have 24-year-old Raid Janai Dason and 27-year-old Neil Jabri Duan, where both of them were arrested after an incident in Ichikawa Zoo near Tokyo, where Daison entered the monkey enclosure while Duan was filming from the outside. And authorities say the person who entered the enclosure was wearing a bright blue suit and a giant emoji-style mascot face. Because apparently, if you're going to become an international nuisance, you might as well dress up like some degenerate meme coin mascot. But before we get into more details on the story, we should probably talk about the monkey itself, because this isn't just some random animal at some random zoo. This is Punch. And if you somehow missed the whole story around Punch, you need to understand this monkey has a genuine fan base. The internet became very invested in this monkey's life. And I know that sounds a little bit ridiculous until you actually look at what happened, because Punch unfortunately was abandoned by his mother shortly after he was born. So Punch was then raised by the zoo staff. And when keepers eventually reintroduced him to the larger monkey troop, he struggled to fit in. And again, unlike most young monkeys, Punch didn't have a mother teaching him how to interact with the other monkeys. So videos showed him approaching adults only to get pushed away. And people started finding this tiny monkey and trying to figure out where he belonged. So you had a whole bunch of videos of Punch dragging around his stuffed orangutan because he didn't have any other monkeys to sit with. So then the internet decided that we're just going to pour infinite love into this monkey.
I've only had
Punch
for a day and a half. But if anything happened to him, I would
delete
everyone in this room and then myself.
And the zoo started launching the hashtag #HangInTherePunch. And suddenly, videos that were originally intended as simple zoo updates were being viewed by millions of people around the world. Like, was Punch bullied today? Did he sit next to another monkey today? Did he make a new friend? Every time there was an update, people either celebrated or were worried for him. And I am not even exaggerated by saying people were following Punch the monkey like people, I guess, follow their favorite sports team. And this stuffed orangutan became a huge part of that story. Everywhere Punch went, he brought his little stuffed orangutan with him. And while visitors thought this was adorable, zoo staff actually viewed it a little bit differently. So according to the zoo, the stuffed animal was essentially acting as a substitute source of comfort. And the goal wasn't for Punch to carry it forever. The goal was for him to eventually gain enough confidence that he wouldn't need it anymore. And little by little, things started improving. So videos showed that Punch was actually spending more and more time with and around other monkeys. And instead of being pushed away, he was actually gradually being accepted. The lonely monkey was finally finding his place. And that's when Punch's popularity exploded. So visitor numbers at the zoo more than doubled. People traveled specifically all the way to Japan just to see him. And people started buying the exact same stuffed orangutan that he carried around. And at one point, the zoo was receiving so much attention that visitors were actually asked to stay quiet around the enclosure and limit how long they were watching the monkeys so they wouldn't become stressed. fast. And then on top of that, people started donating more and more money just because they wanted to support him and the zoo. And eventually, donations reached the equivalent of hundreds of thousands of dollars. I mean, there were social media pages dedicated entirely to posting updates about Punch, and there are websites dedicated entirely to tracking Punch's updates. And I'm not even joking. I mean, there are people whose job appears to be keeping the public informed about the daily activities of one monkey. And at one point, even after the incident that we're about to discuss, fans were so worried that websites started publishing updates specifically reassuring people that Punch had not been injured. Like, think about that for a second. Like, this monkey has reached a level of fame where strangers around the world are checking in on the breaking news updates to make sure that he's having a good day. Honestly, the little guy has better PR than most celebrities out there. And that's exactly why what happened on May 17th caused such a huge reaction. Because May 17th, what I know it as is the Independence Day of Norway. Gratulerer med dagen to all my Norwegians out there. But unfortunately, for all the Punch fans out there, that's when they got jump scared because these morons decided to do this social media stunt where one of them jumped into the enclosure where Punch was. On the 17th of May of 2026, Raid and Neil, they arrive here at the zoo. And I do also want to just reiterate how much effort these guys put into this because they bought plane tickets, they traveled all the way to Japan, they made it through customs, made it to the zoo, and put on a costume so they could then jump into an enclosure with a monkey. I mean, what a fascinating use of free will. Like, of all things to do, why? Like, I get why. They're trying to promote some cryptocurrency. But still, at no point did either of them think, maybe it's not a good idea to jump into an enclosure with a bunch of monkeys here in Japan. But I guess, no, they didn't think that whatsoever. Because let's be real, there is no way they could have done this and not been caught. But regardless, I guess they have more commitment than brains, and they were arrested for this. And the video from the incident shows the dude in the costume climbing over the barrier and dropping down into the enclosure. And immediately, things went exactly the way you would expect. The monkeys didn't want anything to do with this, and witnesses reported that the troops scattered away from the intruder and moved towards higher ground. So nearly 50 to 60 monkeys were inside that enclosure at the time, including Punch. And now all these monkeys suddenly had this giant yellow emoji fall into their neighborhood. But thankfully, that's when zoo staff got in there and no one was hurt and no monkeys were hurt. But the zoo staff later said the animals appeared to be scared by the incident, and the monkeys don't know if they're a part of a prank or not, as far as they're concerned. Also, a giant mysterious creature just dropping into the enclosure, you're gonna have a bad day regardless of what creature you are. But of course, as I hinted at earlier, all of this was tied to some dumb meme coin or a crypto promotion. So that's when I have to remind myself, hey, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Because what do you mean that you're flying across the world to harass a monkey that's known for having social problems? But apparently the stunt was connected to a content competition ran by some cryptocurrency meme coin. And here, I guess the prize was $1 million. So these gigabrains thought if they flew to Japan and jumped into a monkey enclosure, they would win $1 million. Did they win $1 million? No. You know, because the main problem here is a chance to win $1 million is not the same thing of actually receiving $1 million. If your marketing strategy involves in committing a crime in a foreign country, there's a decent chance that your business plan needs a little bit of workshopping. But hey, what's especially wild is they did defend the stunt afterwards because according to the report, the goal was simply to give Punch a toy for companionship. Okay. Punch already has a toy, and if you really wanted to do it, you could have given it to the zoo staff. Would have Punch actually received this toy? Probably not. But at least that would have came across as a little bit more genuine. It's almost giving the same energy as showing up to Ronaldo's house with a soccer ball. Like, okay, thank you, but why? And also, you're trespassing. Get out. And apparently this company did actually offer $1 million yen donation to the zoo afterwards because I guess they didn't want to be associated with these morons. But a lot of people were also kind of wondering why there was no apology from them. But essentially, the internet felt like they were saying, hey, sorry, your fence got broken by someone trying to win our prize. Here's some money. But the key thing they didn't say is the people shouldn't have been climbing on that fence. And you're probably wondering, did this stunt help the crypto? Well, sadly, kind of. Because the token associated with Punch briefly jumped in value after the whole thing got some attention. But, you know, there was a small problem. The token was still reportedly down roughly 94% from the peak. So, in the grand scheme of things, I don't know how much that actually helped. And obviously, this is a meme coin, so as soon as it pumped a little bit, it completely retraced. So still, even after all this attention, the project was nowhere near what it once was. And also, it didn't even take long for the situation to go from viral stunt to criminal case, because the zoo obviously wasn't laughing, and neither were the Japanese authorities. So essentially, the consequences just started when he left the enclosure, because almost immediately the zoo began making changes, and officials expanded the restricted viewing area around the monkey enclosure. They also installed anti-intrusion netting, and they started additional patrols in the area. So essentially, these two guys made the viewing experience of genuine fans way worse. Wow, thank you. And they even started talking about if, photography and filming near the enclosure would be restricted or even banned. So think about that for a second. You have millions of people spending months following Punch stories. Families are traveling across the world to see this monkey. That opportunity might be removed. All because two complete morons thought it was a good idea to climb into the enclosure to try to farm attention for their meme coin. But the charges they got, depending on which report you read, reads a little bit different because they're all being translated. So some outlets are calling it obstructing zoo operations, and others described it as disrupting business. But regardless of the wording, the important part is the Japanese authorities didn't simply escort these guys out of the zoo. They actually arrested them. And unfortunately, every time stories like this happen, it seems like the dudes are like, well, come on, it was just a prank, bro. And that's kind of what they were saying. And honestly, that's not even that far from their response. But authorities referred the case to the prosecutors on suspicion of forcible obstruction of business. And both men have denied doing anything wrong. I don't know. To me, getting content this way is probably the dumbest thing possible. Like, why would you ever become a public nuisance and create chaos in hope of attention? Because then that content's just going to be used against you. Like I've said this in yesterday's video and in so many videos before. Why would you ever want to be the star witness in the case against yourself? Just sounds backwards to me. And unfortunately for them, the internet didn't think it was as funny as what they thought because, everyone was worried about Punch. So, Punch here in this case is being seen as the victim. And these guys are the perpetrators who are ruining it for everyone. So obviously, it's safe to say nobody likes these influencers now. But hey, I guess if the goal was attention, they got some attention. It's just negative attention. And of course, they didn't win the prizes they wanted to. And they're essentially banned from Japan now. Because you might be wondering, why am I talking about this case now and not right when it happened? Well, I wanted to see what actually happened to these guys before I covered it. And there is an update to the story, but regardless, I guess we've just reached a point in internet history where viral animals need their own security detail. This is pretty sad. But at the end of the day, Japan fined them with 300,000 yen, which at the time of recording this video is roughly $1,900. And then on top of that, because of how Japan's rules are, they're essentially banned from Japan for at least 5 years because of this, because you can't enter Japan with a criminal record within 5 years. And the key word there is it's at least 5 years, because after the 5-year time, they can still deny you from entering the country. So at the end of the day, was the stunt worth being held in jail for about a month, $1,900 each in fines, and being banned from Japan for like 5 years? I don't think so. And then of course, on top of that, they didn't win the $1 million they were trying to win. So I guess they just leave this entire situation being the big idiots. Regardless though, this is still just a net negative to society, because now they just made it harder for everyone else to see the monkey that has so many fans. I guess the only good thing about this is it seems like they were not rewarded from this, because we should really not be rewarding people committing crimes for attention online. But hey, that's just my opinion. What do I know? Either way, it just seems like they just got rugged here. But other than that, if you're new here, feel free to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in tomorrow's video. Peace.